Block 1. The scent of bleach burned my nostrils as I scrubbed the marble floor on my hands and knees. 3 months into this job, and my fingerprints had nearly disappeared from the harsh chemicals, but I couldn't complain. The pay was triple what I'd make anywhere else in the city, and I needed every penny. "You missed a spot," I startled, nearly knocking over my bucket of soapy water. I hadn't heard him approach. They never did in this house. The man standing over me wore a crisp black suit, aviator sunglasses despite being indoors, and a neutral expression that revealed nothing. Marco, one of Mr. Castellano's many drivers and bodyguards. "Sorry," I murmured, immediately scrubbing at the invisible stain he'd pointed to. Marco watched me for another moment, then walked away, his expensive leather shoes clicking against the marble I'd just cleaned. I exhaled slowly. Working in Vincent Castellano's mansion was like living in a beautiful prison, constantly watched, every movement scrutinized. I'd never actually seen the man himself. Not really, just glimpses of his silhouette through frosted glass doors, hushed conversations behind closed doors, and the occasional bark of orders to his staff. All I knew came from whispers among the household staff. He was dangerous, powerful, and not someone you wanted to notice you. I finished the floors and moved to dusting the collection of crystal figurines in the main parlor, my body aching from the morning's work. The irony wasn't lost on me. I polished priceless objects worth more than I'd earn in a decade. But this job kept a roof over my head and food on the table after Daniel died, leaving me with nothing but debts and broken promises. The sound of car tires on gravel drew my attention to the window. A sleek black Mercedes pulled into the circular driveway, flanked by 2 identical SUVs. My heart rate quickened. Mr. Castellano was home early. I quickly gathered my cleaning supplies, preparing to make myself scarce. Mrs. Rossi, the housekeeper who'd hired me, had been clear. When the boss was home, we were to be invisible unless called for. I was halfway to the service stairs when the front door opened. I froze, trapped in the open foyer as 4 men entered. 3 I recognized as security personnel, but the 4th, he was taller than I'd expected, broad-shouldered in a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than my annual rent, dark hair with threads of silver at the temples, cut precisely. But it was his eyes that paralyzed me, obsidian dark, calculating, noticing everything, including me. For 3 eternal seconds, Vincent Castellano looked directly at me, his gaze moving from my face down to my worn sneakers and back up. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't look away. Then he turned to his right-hand man, Antonio, and continued their conversation as if I were invisible. I exhaled and hurried toward the stairs, my hands trembling. "Girl." The single word stopped me cold. His voice was deeper than I'd imagined, with the faintest accent I couldn't place. I turned slowly, eyes downcast. "Yes, sir?" "You're new." It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. 3 months, sir." He studied me for another moment, then dismissed me with a slight nod. I scurried away, feeling the weight of his gaze on my back until I disappeared down the service hallway. That night, I couldn't sleep. The encounter replayed in my mind. His piercing gaze, the way the room's energy had shifted when he entered. I told myself I was being ridiculous. He was my employer, nothing more. A dangerous man who wouldn't spare another thought for the cleaning girl. I was wrong. The next morning, Mrs. Rossi approached me as I arrived. "Mr. Castellano wants you to clean his private office today." My stomach dropped. "But Sophia always does the upper floor." Mrs. Rossi shrugged, her expression unreadable. "Not today. He asked for you specifically." The upper floor of the mansion was even more opulent than the main level. Thick carpets muffled my footsteps as I pushed my cleaning cart toward the double doors at the end of the hallway. 2 men stood guard outside, their jacket bulges revealing the weapons they carried. "I'm here to clean," I said, my voice embarrassingly small. One of them looked me over, then opened the door without a word. I wheeled my cart inside, then stopped, awestruck. The office was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the expansive grounds, walls lined with bookshelves, a massive desk dominating the center. And standing with his back to me, looking out over his domain, was Vincent Castellano. "Close the door," he said without turning around. I did as instructed, my pulse hammering. He turned slowly, those dark eyes fixing on me again. Your name? Elena Porter, sir. He walked to his desk, moving with the confidence of a man who'd never known fear. Elena, tell me about yourself. It wasn't a request. I clutched my cleaning caddy like a shield. There's not much to tell, sir. I clean houses. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Everyone has a story, Elena Porter. I swallowed hard. I lost my husband last year. I needed work. Mrs. Rossi hired me. He nodded, studying me like I was a puzzle he was attempting to solve. You do good work. Thorough. Thank you, sir. The compliment should have been reassuring. It wasn't. You may clean now. I'll be working. For the next hour, I dusted and polished in silence while Vincent Castellano made phone calls in Italian and reviewed documents. I felt his eyes on me occasionally, but never caught him looking. When I finished, I quietly gathered my supplies. Same time tomorrow, he said as I reached the door. It wasn't a request. For 2 weeks, this became my new routine. Every morning, I cleaned his office while he worked. Sometimes he asked questions, simple ones about my day or preferences. Sometimes we worked in complete silence. I began to relax marginally in his presence, though the electricity in the air never dissipated. Then came the day that changed everything. I was dusting the bookshelves when my phone vibrated in my pocket. I ignored it. No personal calls during work hours was rule number 1. It vibrated again, and again. Finally, I snuck a glance at the screen. 3 missed calls from Sister Mary at St. Catherine's Children's Home. My blood ran cold. Jamie, I'm sorry, sir, I blurted, forgetting protocol entirely. I need to make a call. It's an emergency. Vincent looked up from his desk, surprise momentarily crossing his features before his expression settled back into its usual impassivity. He gestured toward the door. Be quick. I hurried into the hallway, past the curious guards, and called back immediately. Elena, thank goodness. Sister Mary answered. It's Jamie. He's having one of his episodes, worse than before. The doctor is suggesting hospitalization. My heart constricted. I'll be there in 30 minutes. I hung up and returned to the office, already untying my apron. I'm sorry, Mr. Castellano. I need to leave. It's an emergency. His eyes narrowed slightly. What kind of emergency? I hesitated. My personal life was not something I discussed, especially not with him, but I needed to leave immediately. A child at St. Catherine's. I volunteer there. He's sick, and I'm his emergency contact. Vincent studied me for a long moment, then picked up his phone. Antonio, bring the car around. We're going out. My eyes widened. Sir, that's not necessary. I can take the bus. We leave in 5 minutes, he interrupted, already standing and adjusting his cufflinks. I'll drive you. 20 minutes later, I sat rigid in the back of Vincent Castellano's Mercedes, separated from him by an arm's length that felt like miles. 2 identical black SUVs followed us, his security never far behind. I stared out the window, anxiety for Jamie overriding my discomfort at being alone with the most dangerous man in the city. This child, Vincent said, breaking the silence. Who is he to you? I hesitated, then decided the truth was simplest. His name is Jamie. He's 8. His mother was my best friend. When she died last year, there was no one else. Vincent nodded, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. And the father? Never in the picture, I replied, the familiar bitterness creeping into my voice. Jamie has severe asthma and anxiety. The attacks feed each other. I visit him every day after work. But I can't afford to take him in, not yet. I hadn't meant to share so much, but stress had loosened my tongue. Vincent said nothing more as we pulled up to St. Catherine's, a worn brick building with peeling paint and a small playground. Wait here, I said, then immediately regretted my commanding tone. Please. To my surprise, Vincent stepped out of the car with me, signaling his security to remain behind. I'll accompany you. Sister Mary met us at the entrance, her eyes widening at the sight of Vincent and his entourage waiting outside. Elena, thank God. He's in the infirmary. I rushed down the familiar hallway, momentarily forgetting about the man following silently behind me. Jamie was huddled on a small bed, his thin shoulders shaking with each labored breath. The volunteer doctor stood nearby, adjusting an oxygen mask. "Jamie," I whispered, kneeling beside his bed. His small hand clutched mine desperately. "He needs specialized treatment," the doctor said quietly. "The medication isn't working as well anymore. He needs to see a specialist." The words hit me like physical blows. Specialists meant money I didn't have. "I'll figure something out," I promised, smoothing Jamie's damp hair from his forehead. "You'll be okay, buddy. Just breathe with me. In, out, that's it." Gradually, his breathing steadied, his death grip on my hand relaxing slightly. Only then did I become aware of Vincent standing in the doorway, his dark gaze taking in everything. The shabby room, the outdated medical equipment, Jamie's worn pajamas. I stayed until Jamie fell asleep, exhaustion overtaking him after the attack. When I finally stepped out into the hallway, Vincent was speaking quietly with Sister Mary. They fell silent as I approached. "He's resting now," I said, suddenly self-conscious about the tear tracks on my cheeks. "I've made arrangements," Vincent said, his tone brooking no argument. "A specialist will see the boy tomorrow. Antonio will pick you up at 7. I stared at him, speechless. "Mr. Castellano, I can't possibly accept—" "It's done," he interrupted. "The car is waiting." The ride back to the mansion was silent. My mind raced with questions, with gratitude, with suspicion. Why would this man, who barely knew me, help Jamie? What would he expect in return? As we pulled through the gates of his estate, Vincent finally spoke again. "Take the rest of the day off. I expect you at 7 sharp tomorrow." I nodded, still overwhelmed. "Thank you," I managed. "For Jamie. I don't know how to repay—" "I don't want your repayment," he cut in, his voice suddenly harsh. Then, softer, "Just be here tomorrow." As I walked to the staff quarters, I felt something shift between us. A boundary crossed, a door opened that couldn't be closed again. I didn't understand his interest in me or in Jamie, but I knew with absolute certainty that Vincent Castellano was now irrevocably entangled in our lives, and that terrified me more than any threat he could have made. Sleep evaded me that night, my thoughts circling like hungry wolves. Vincent Castellano's unexpected kindness felt dangerous, more threatening than his coldness had ever been. People like him didn't help people like me without expecting something in return. The question was, what did he want? By morning, exhaustion had settled into my bones, but anxiety kept me alert. I dressed carefully in my cleanest jeans and a simple blouse, the best I could manage for a hospital visit. At precisely 7, I stood at the service entrance, my stomach in knots. Antonio was waiting, his usual stoic expression firmly in place. "Ms. Porter," he greeted with a curt nod, opening the car door. I expected to find Vincent inside. Instead, the back seat was empty. "Mr. Castellano had business to attend to this morning," Antonio explained, catching my confused expression in the rearview mirror. "He'll meet us at the hospital." The drive to St. Catherine's passed in tense silence. When we arrived, Jamie was already dressed and waiting, his small face pale, but excited at the prospect of riding in a fancy car. My heart clenched at how little it took to thrill him. "Where are we going, Lena?" he asked, his voice raspy from yesterday's attack. I buckled him into the middle seat, forcing a smile. "A special doctor who's going to help with your breathing. Is he nice?" "I'm sure she is," I answered, having no idea who we were actually seeing. Jamie's eyes widened as we pulled up to the gleaming private medical facility across town. "This place is for rich people," he whispered, clutching my hand. "Today it's for you," I whispered back, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Vincent was waiting in the lobby, engaged in quiet conversation with a distinguished-looking woman in a white coat. He turned as we entered, his gaze fixing first on Jamie, then shifting to me. Something unidentifiable flickered across his features, before his expression settled back into its usual mask. "Elena," he said, his deep voice sending an involuntary shiver down my spine. "This is Dr. Kaplan. She's the best pulmonary specialist in the state." Dr. Kaplan smiled warmly, crouching down to Jamie's level. "You must be James. I've heard you've been having trouble breathing." Jamie nodded solemnly, still partly hiding behind me. Well, let's see what we can do about that, shall we? She offered her hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Jamie took it. As Dr. Kaplan led Jamie toward the examination room, Vincent placed his hand lightly on my lower back, guiding me to follow. The warmth of his touch through my thin blouse was disorienting. "You look tired," he observed quietly. "I didn't sleep much," I admitted. His eyes lingered on my face. "You were worried I wouldn't come through on my promise." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "No. I was worried about what it might cost." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Smart girl." Before I could respond, we entered the examination room where Dr. Kaplan was already listening to Jamie's chest. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of tests, consultations, and medical terminology that made my head spin. Jamie, brave as always, endured it all with minimal complaint, though his eyes sought mine frequently for reassurance. Throughout it all, Vincent remained. Not hovering, not intruding, but present, observing everything with those penetrating eyes. He spoke briefly on his phone several times, stepped out once for about 15 minutes, but otherwise stayed. I couldn't fathom why the head of a criminal empire would spend his morning in a doctor's office for a child he'd never met before yesterday. Finally, Dr. Kaplan sat us down with the results. "James has a severe form of asthma that's been inadequately treated," she explained. "The good news is that with the right medication regimen and possibly some minor procedures, we can significantly improve his quality of life." Hope bloomed in my chest. "So he can get better?" "Much better," she confirmed. "I'm prescribing a new inhaler, daily medication, and I'd like to see him again next week. We'll also schedule the bronchial thermoplasty to help reduce the airway constriction." My hope wilted as quickly as it had grown. Even with insurance, which Jamie barely had, these treatments would cost thousands. Money I simply didn't have. "I understand," I said mechanically, taking the prescriptions she offered. "I'd figure something out. I always did." "Dr. Kaplan will be overseeing James's care personally moving forward," Vincent interjected smoothly. "All expenses are covered." Dr. Kaplan nodded as if this were perfectly normal. "I've already called in the prescriptions to the pharmacy downstairs. They'll be ready by the time you leave." I sat frozen, unable to process what was happening. Jamie, sensing my distress, pressed against my side. "Lena," he whispered. "Are you okay?" I forced myself to nod, to smile, to thank Dr. Kaplan. But inside, panic rose like floodwater. What was Vincent doing? Why? The debt I was accruing to this man grew by the minute, and I had no way to repay it. Vincent waited outside while I helped Jamie change back into his clothes. The boy was unusually quiet, his perceptive eyes darting between Vincent and me whenever we were together. "Is that man your boss?" he finally asked as I tied his shoelaces. "Yes," I answered simply. Jamie considered this. "He looks scary, but he's helping me. Like a villain who's actually good?" A startled laugh escaped me. "I'm not sure about that, buddy." "He keeps looking at you," Jamie continued, his observation unnervingly accurate, "like Dad used to look at Mom in the old pictures." My hands stilled. "That's enough, Jamie." After collecting the medications, we found Vincent waiting by the car. To my surprise, he opened the door himself rather than leaving it to Antonio. I thought perhaps James might enjoy lunch before returning to St. Catherine's, he suggested, his tone casual, but his eyes watchful for my reaction. Jamie's face lit up. "Can we, Lena? Please?" "Trapped," I nodded. "That would be lovely. Thank you." We ended up at a small Italian restaurant that didn't look particularly impressive from the outside, but clearly catered to an exclusive clientele. The owner greeted Vincent personally, leading us to a private room in the back where a table was already set. No reservation had been made. They simply always kept a space ready for Vincent Castellano. Jamie was wide-eyed at the attention, but quickly warmed to the owner's daughter who brought him a special menu and crayons. I sat stiffly, hyper-aware of Vincent across the table, studying us. "Relax, Elena," he said softly. "Enjoy the meal." I tried, for Jamie's sake. The food was exquisite. Homemade pasta that melted in your mouth, bread still warm from the oven, a chocolate dessert that made Jamie giggle with delight. Throughout the meal, Vincent drew Jamie out with questions about his interests, his favorite subjects in school, His dreams. The boy responded cautiously at first, then with increasing animation. I watched in bewilderment as Vincent Castellano, feared crime lord, ruthless businessman, listened with apparent interest to an 8-year-old's detailed explanation of how dinosaurs went extinct. "You're very knowledgeable," Vincent told Jamie, who beamed at the praise. "Lena takes me to the museum whenever she can," he explained. "We've been 5 times. Vincent's eyes met mine over Jamie's head. "She takes good care of you. She's the best," Jamie said with the absolute conviction only children can muster. "When her husband died, she still came to see me every day, even though she was sad. And when my mom went to heaven too, Lena promised she'd never leave me." His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "She's saving money so I can live with her someday." Tears pricked my eyes. I hadn't known he'd understood that. Vincent's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. "Is that so?" After lunch, Antonio drove us back to St. Catherine's. Jamie fell asleep against my side, exhausted from the excitement. When we arrived, Vincent surprised me by stepping out of the car. "I'll speak with the administration," he said. "About James's medical needs." I carefully transferred the sleeping child to Sister Mary, who appeared both intimidated and intrigued by Vincent's presence. While they disappeared into the office, I sat in the worn reception area, emotionally and physically drained. 20 minutes later, Vincent emerged, his face unreadable. "It's time to go," he said simply. In the car, the silence stretched between us until I couldn't bear it any longer. "Why are you doing this?" I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Vincent gazed out the window, the setting sun casting shadows across his sharp features. "Does it matter?" "To me, yes." I turned to face him fully. "Jamie is everything to me. If you expect something in return, stop." His voice was hard as steel. "Don't insult me, Elena." "Then what?" "People like you don't help people like me without reason." "People like me," he repeated, a dangerous edge to his voice. "And what kind of person am I exactly?" I swallowed hard. "Powerful." "Dangerous. Used to getting what you want." His laugh was without humor. "You know nothing about what I want." The car pulled through the gates of the estate, ending our conversation. Before I could open my door, Vincent's hand closed around my wrist. Not painfully, but inescapably. "Have dinner with me tonight," he said. Not a question. Never a question with him. I stared at his hand on my wrist, then up at his face. "Is that an order, Mr. Castellano?" "Vincent," he corrected, and no. "It's an invitation. An invitation I couldn't refuse." We both knew it. "What time?" I asked. 8. "Antonio will come for you." I nodded, slipping out of the car and hurrying toward the staff quarters, feeling his eyes on me until I disappeared inside. As I showered and changed into the only decent dress I owned, a simple black sheath I'd worn to Daniel's funeral, I tried to make sense of the day, of Vincent Castellano's interest in Jamie, in me. The man was an enigma wrapped in danger, and every instinct told me to run as far and as fast as I could, but Jamie's smiling face kept appearing in my mind. For the first time in over a year, he had hope, access to care, a chance at a normal life, and it was all because of the man I was about to have dinner with. At precisely 8 o'clock, I emerged from my room to find Antonio waiting. He led me not to the main house, but to a separate structure on the grounds, a glass-walled building overlooking the cliffs and the sea beyond. My pulse raced as Antonio opened the door and ushered me inside, then discreetly disappeared. Vincent stood with his back to me, silhouetted against the panoramic view, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He turned slowly, his eyes capturing mine, and I felt something shift in the air between us, like the moment before lightning strikes. "Elena," he said, my name a caress in his mouth. "Welcome." The space was intimate, a private dining room with a small table set for 2, candles casting golden light across fine china and crystal. Classical music played softly from hidden speakers. It was romantic, intentionally so, and that realization sent a flutter of alarm through me. Vincent approached, his movements fluid and controlled. He'd changed from his business suit into charcoal slacks and a black shirt, open at the collar, more casual, yet somehow even more intimidating. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes traveling over me in a way that made my skin warm. "Thank you," I managed, suddenly aware of how plain my dress was, how obviously cheap compared to the luxury surrounding us. He pulled out my chair, and I sat, hyper-aware of his proximity as he moved to the opposite side of the small table. A server appeared from nowhere, pouring wine into my glass before disappearing as silently as he'd come. "I hope you like Italian," Vincent said, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. The chef prepared something special. I took a sip of wine, needing something to steady my nerves. "You've been very kind to Jamie. I don't know how to thank you. Is that why you think you're here? To thank me?" His expression darkened slightly. I set down my glass carefully. "I don't know why I'm here, Vincent. That's what concerns me." He studied me, those obsidian eyes unreadable. "You're here because I want you to be. Because since the moment I saw you, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you." The blunt admission stunned me into silence. The first course arrived, delicate scallops arranged like art on the plate, giving me a moment to recover. "You don't know me," I finally said. "I know more than you think." He took a sip of his wine, eyes never leaving mine. "Elena Porter, née Mitchell, 28 years old. Married at 23 to Daniel Porter, who died 15 months ago in what was ruled an accident." His voice hardened on the last word. "You worked as a teacher before your husband's death left you with significant debt. You visit James Sullivan at St. Catherine's every day, bringing him books and spending your limited free time with him. His mother was Catherine Sullivan, your roommate in college." Ice slid down my spine. "You've been investigating me. I like to know who works in my home." "You don't do this for every maid," I countered. Vincent's mouth curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "No, I don't." We ate in tense silence for several minutes, the food exquisite but barely registering on my palate. My mind raced with implications, with questions, with warnings. "Your husband," Vincent finally said, "was not the man you thought he was." My fork clattered against the plate. "Excuse me?" Daniel Porter was involved with dangerous people. He owed significant money to people who don't forgive debts. Anger flared through me, hot and sudden. "You don't know what you're talking about. Daniel was a financial advisor. He died in a car accident arranged by Lorenzo Ricci after your husband stole from him." Vincent's voice was gentle, at odds with the brutality of his words. "A theft that put you in Ricci's crosshairs as well." The room seemed to tilt around me. "That's not possible. The debts you've been paying? They weren't from bad investments. They were from gambling. Your husband embezzled from Ricci's accounts to cover his losses, then tried to disappear with the money." My hands trembled as I reached for my water glass. Daniel had been distant in those final months, working late, evasive about finances. I'd attributed it to stress, to the failing economy. Not this. "Why are you telling me this?" I whispered. Vincent leaned forward. "Because Ricci's men have been watching you. They believe you know where the money is hidden." Fear, cold and visceral, washed through me. I know." His hand covered mine on the table, warm and solid. "That's why I brought you here, to my home. For protection." I stared at him, pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. "You knew? All this time? The job was to keep you safe?" "Yes." At least he had the decency to look slightly apologetic. "Ricci is my rival. Taking you off the streets, bringing you under my protection, it served multiple purposes." I pulled my hand away, nausea rising in my throat. "So I've been what? A pawn? A way to spite your enemy?" "At first," he admitted, his honesty cutting deeper than lies would have. "But things changed." "When?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "The moment you walked into my house." His eyes held mine, intensity burning in their depths. "I intended to merely observe you, to use you as leverage if needed. I never expected to care," I finished bitterly. "To want." The rawness in his voice sent a shiver through me. "There's a difference." Before I could respond, the door opened and Antonio entered, his usual composure visibly shaken. He leaned down to whisper something in Vincent's ear. I watched Vincent's expression harden into something cold and deadly. "When?" he demanded. 10 minutes ago, Antonio replied. "The east perimeter." Vincent stood abruptly. Take her to the safe room. Now." "What's happening?" I asked, rising on unsteady legs. Vincent's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw something like regret in them. "Ricci found you." Antonio gripped my arm firmly, already pulling me toward a hidden door behind a bookcase. Vincent moved in the opposite direction, speaking rapidly into a phone in Italian. "Wait," I called, panic rising. "Jamie," Vincent paused, understanding immediately. "The boy is safe. I moved him to a private facility this afternoon." Relief mingled with fresh fear. "Vincent, go with Antonio," he commanded, his tone brooking no argument. "Stay in the safe room until I come for you, no matter what you hear." Antonio rushed me through a narrow passage and down a flight of stairs. Behind us, I heard shouting, then the unmistakable crack of gunfire. My heart hammered against my ribs as we descended deeper into the earth, emerging finally into a fortified room with concrete walls and no windows. "You'll be safe here," Antonio said, checking a monitor that showed security feeds from around the property. "No one can breach this room." "What's happening up there?" I demanded, hugging myself to stop the trembling. Antonio's expression was grim. "Ricci's men have been watching the property for days. They made their move tonight. Because of me," I whispered. He didn't deny it. "Mr. Castellano has been expecting this. He's prepared." For a war? Because of me? The reality of what was happening crashed over me in waves. Men were fighting, possibly dying because of money Daniel had stolen, because Vincent had protected me. "Not because of you," Antonio corrected. "For you. There's a difference." He left me alone then, presumably to join the fight above. I paced the small room, jumping at every muffled sound from above, imagination conjuring horrific scenes. Minutes stretched into an hour, then 2. I found myself praying for Jamie's safety, for Vincent's, even for my own, though I hardly deserved it. The door finally opened, and I spun around, hope and dread warring within me. Vincent stood in the doorway, his white shirt splattered with blood, a cut above his eye slowly dripping down his temple. But he was alive, standing, whole. "Is it over?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He nodded once, his eyes never leaving mine as he stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "Ricci?" "Will no longer be a problem," Vincent said, his voice flat. I swallowed hard, not wanting to know the details. "Are you hurt?" "Not my blood." He moved to a cabinet, pulling out a first aid kit for the cut on his forehead. Without thinking, I took it from him. "Sit down," I said softly. To my surprise, he complied, sinking onto a leather sofa as I opened the kit. I dampened a gauze pad with antiseptic and gently cleaned the cut, hyper-aware of his eyes tracking my every movement, of his breath warm against my wrist. "Why?" I whispered, the question encompassing everything. Why protect me? Why care about Jamie? Why risk everything for someone like me? His hand came up, fingers wrapping gently around my wrist, stopping my ministrations. "Because in my world, Elena, nothing is freely given, nothing is honest, nothing is real." His voice dropped lower, "until you." "You don't know me," I repeated, an echo of my earlier protest. "I've had men watching you for months," he countered. "I know how you bring food to the homeless man on your corner, how you read to the elderly woman in your building, how you spend every spare penny on that boy." His other hand came up to cradle my face. "I know exactly who you are, Elena Porter, and that's why I can't let you go." The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, it sent heat curling through my body, awakening sensations I'd thought died with Daniel. "And Jamie?" I asked, needing to understand. "Why help him?" Something vulnerable flickered across Vincent's face. "I was 7 when my mother died. My father's enemies used me to get to him." His jaw tightened. "No child should be a pawn in our world." I saw then what he couldn't say directly, that in Jamie he saw himself, that beneath the ruthless exterior, some part of the wounded child remained. "The men who came tonight," I began. "They would have killed me?" "Yes. No pretense. No sugarcoating. They would have tortured you first, trying to find money that doesn't exist anymore. I closed my eyes, reality crashing down. So what happens now? Now you stay here, under my protection, permanently. My eyes snapped open. As what? Your maid? Your prisoner? Vincent's gaze burned into mine. As mine, Elena. In whatever way you choose. The implication was clear, sending a dizzying mix of fear and something far more dangerous spiraling through me. And if I want to leave? You won't survive a day, he said bluntly. Ricci is gone, but others will come. In our world, debts don't die with the creditor. I didn't ask for this, I whispered, tears burning behind my eyes. Any of it. Neither did I, Vincent replied, surprising me. I didn't ask to want you the way I do, to need you near me, to think about you every moment you're out of my sight. His thumb brushed across my cheek. I didn't ask to care what happened to you or to that boy, but here we are. The raw honesty in his voice undid me. I'd spent 15 months since Daniel's death barely surviving, carrying the weight of unpayable debts, of Jamie's illness, of crushing loneliness. And now this man, this dangerous, powerful man, offered protection, security. For me, and for Jamie. But at what cost? Vincent seemed to read the question in my eyes. I won't force you, Elena. Not ever. The choice will always be yours. What choice? I asked bitterly. Stay or die doesn't sound like much of a choice. His expression softened fractionally. Stay, or let me set you up somewhere new. New identity. New life. Far from here. He paused. But without me. The alternative surprised me. Then his final words registered, and I realized with shock that the thought of never seeing him again caused an unexpected ache in my chest. And Jamie? We'll receive the best care either way. That's non-negotiable. I studied his face, searching for deceit and finding none. Only that same intensity, that same hunger that both terrified and thrilled me. I need time, I finally said. To think. Vincent nodded, releasing me and standing. Of course, but not here. It's not safe now that Ricci's men know your connection to me. Then where? I have a house on the coast, isolated, secure. He moved to the door. Pack whatever you need. We leave in an hour. He was gone before I could respond, leaving me alone with impossible choices and the lingering warmth of his touch on my skin. Dawn was breaking as we drove along the coastal highway, painting the sky in watercolor shades of pink and gold. I hadn't slept, my mind too full of the night's revelations, my body still humming with adrenaline. Vincent sat beside me in the back of the Mercedes, silent since we'd left the mansion 3 hours earlier. 2 SUVs followed at a discreet distance, his security never far away. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass of the window, watching the ocean appear and disappear around curves in the road. My entire life had been upended in less than 24 hours. Daniel's secrets, Ricci's threats, Vincent's protection, and his desire. It was too much to process. We'll be there soon, Vincent said, breaking the silence. His voice was rough with fatigue, though he appeared as impeccable as ever in a fresh suit. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. In the front seat, Antonio kept his eyes on the road, but I knew he missed nothing. Jamie? I finally asked, the question that had been burning in my throat. Is comfortable at the private facility? Vincent answered. My personal physician is monitoring him. He thinks he's on a special vacation while you're away on business. Relief washed through me. At least Jamie was safe, away from the violence and danger that now surrounded me. Thank you, I said softly. Vincent's hand found mine on the seat between us, his fingers warm as they threaded through mine. You don't need to thank me, Elena, not for this. The intimacy of the gesture made my pulse quicken. I should have pulled away. Instead, I let my hand remain in his, drawing comfort from the connection. The house on the coast turned out to be a modern glass and stone masterpiece, perched on a cliff overlooking a private beach. Walls of windows captured breathtaking views of the ocean, while the rear of the property backed up to dense forest, ensuring complete privacy. It was beautiful, isolated, and undoubtedly as secure as a fortress. Vincent led me through the main living area with its soaring ceilings and minimalist furnishings, out to a deck that wrapped around the seaward side of the house. "Your room is upstairs, first door on the right," he said. "I've had clothes brought for you. Antonio will bring your things from the car." I nodded, suddenly exhausted as the adrenaline finally ebbed from my system. "And you?" "I have calls to make. Business to attend to." His eyes softened slightly. "Rest, Elena. We'll talk when you wake." I found the bedroom easily, a serene space in shades of blue and gray that echoed the ocean view outside its windows. The closet was filled with new clothing in my size, tags still attached, designer pieces I could never have afforded. On the bed lay silk pajamas and a robe. After showering away the lingering fear and tension in the luxurious marble bathroom, I crawled between the softest sheets I'd ever felt and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. When I woke, the light had changed, the sun now hanging low over the water. I'd slept the entire day away. After dressing in jeans and a simple sweater from the provided wardrobe, I ventured downstairs, following the scent of food to the kitchen. Vincent stood at the massive island, sleeves rolled up, deftly chopping vegetables. The domestic scene was so at odds with the dangerous man I'd seen last night that I stopped short in the doorway. He looked up, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You're awake. You cook?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "When I have the time." He gestured to a stool on the opposite side of the island. "Sit. Wine?" I nodded, still processing this unexpected side of him. Vincent poured a glass of red and slid it toward me, then returned to his preparation. "I spoke with Dr. Kaplan," he said as he worked. "Jamie's procedure is scheduled for next week. She's optimistic about the results." Gratitude welled up in my throat. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you for helping him." Vincent's hands stilled, his eyes finding mine. "Elena, understand this now. I don't want your gratitude or your debt, especially not for the boy." "Then what do you want?" The question hung between us, loaded with implications. He resumed cooking, his movements precise and controlled. "Right now, I want you to eat. You missed breakfast and lunch." I sipped my wine, watching him work. In the soft evening light, with his guard slightly lowered, Vincent Castellano was devastatingly handsome, dangerous in an entirely different way. "Tell me about Jamie," he said after a comfortable silence had settled between us. So I did. I told him about how I'd met Catherine in college, how we'd remained close after graduation, how she'd gotten pregnant after a brief relationship and decided to raise Jamie alone, how I'd become his godmother and a constant in his life, how Catherine's sudden illness had taken her within months, leaving Jamie with no one but me. "And your husband?" Vincent asked, plating pasta with a rich, fragrant sauce. "He didn't share your attachment to the boy?" A bitter smile touched my lips. "Daniel tolerated my relationship with Jamie, but he always had excuses for why we couldn't take him in after Catherine died. Money, space." I shook my head. I see now there were bigger reasons. Vincent placed a plate in front of me, then came around the island to sit beside me rather than across. His proximity sent a flutter of awareness through me. "Your husband was a fool in more ways than one," he said quietly. We ate in companionable silence, the pasta every bit as delicious as anything from the restaurant the day before. After cleaning up together, another strangely domestic moment, Vincent led me to the deck where we sat with fresh glasses of wine, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and reds. "It's beautiful here," I said, letting the peace of the moment wash over me. "I come here when I need to think, to be away from everything." There was a vulnerability in his admission that touched me. "And now?" Vincent turned to face me, his expression serious. "Now I'm here because you need a safe place to make your decision." He paused. "I meant what I said, Elena. I can set you and Jamie up somewhere new. Or I stay with you." I finished for him. "Under your protection. With me," he corrected gently. "Not under me. Not beneath me. With me." The distinction was important, I realized. He wasn't offering to make me a kept woman or a subordinate. He was offering partnership. "I barely know you," I whispered, though it felt like a lie even as I said it. Something about Vincent called to something in me, a recognition that went beyond our brief acquaintance. Then know me, he said simply. Ask me anything. So I did. As night fell and stars appeared above us, I asked about his childhood, his rise to power, his business, both legitimate and otherwise. He answered everything with unflinching honesty, never sanitizing the truth or making excuses for who and what he was. He'd been born to Italian immigrants, his father a low-level enforcer who had clawed his way up through the ranks. His mother had died when he was young, leaving him in the care of a father who'd been both loving and brutal. At 17, Vincent had taken his first life, a rival who'd threatened his father. By 25, he'd built his own organization. By 30, he'd made it legitimate enough to withstand scrutiny while maintaining the power and reach of his less lawful enterprises. "Do you regret any of it?" I asked, watching his profile in the moonlight. "No," he answered immediately, then reconsidered. "Some of it. Necessary evils. Like killing Ricci?" Vincent turned to me, his eyes glittering in the darkness. "I won't apologize for protecting what's mine." A shiver ran through me that had nothing to do with the cool night air. "And am I yours, Vincent?" His hand came up to trace my cheekbone, his touch feather-light. "That's what you need to decide." Later, as I lay in bed staring at the moon-silvered ocean through the windows, I confronted the truth I'd been avoiding. The attraction I felt for Vincent Castellano went beyond gratitude or fear or Stockholm Syndrome. There was something between us. A pull. A connection I couldn't explain but couldn't deny either. He was dangerous, yes. Violent when necessary. Unapologetic about the life he led. But he had also shown me tenderness, honesty, and a fierce protectiveness that made me feel safer than I had in years. With Daniel, I'd lived with the illusion of security that had shattered upon his death. With Vincent, I faced the reality of danger, but with the certainty of his protection. Was that enough? Could I build a life with a man who lived in constant danger, who had blood on his hands? Could I subject Jamie to that world, even if it meant security and the medical care he desperately needed? I didn't sleep much that night, my mind circling the same questions without finding answers. The next morning, I found Vincent in his study, phone pressed to his ear as he gazed out at the ocean. He ended his call when I entered, turning to face me with careful neutrality. "Jamie called," he said. "He'd like to speak with you." My heart leapt. "Is he okay?" "See for yourself." Vincent gestured to a laptop on his desk. The screen showed a video call waiting to connect. I sat down, hands trembling slightly as I clicked to accept the call. Jamie's face filled the screen, his smile bright and untroubled. "Lena, guess what? I'm at a special hospital with games and a swimming pool, and Dr. Kaplan says I can go swimming after my breathing gets better." Tears pricked my eyes at his excitement. "That sounds amazing, buddy. Mr. Vincent's friend Antonio brought me my dinosaur books and some new ones too. And I had ice cream for breakfast." He lowered his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Don't tell Sister Mary." I laughed through my tears. "It'll be our secret. When are you coming to see me? Mr. Vincent said you're on a special trip for work." I glanced up at Vincent, who stood watching us, his expression soft in a way I'd never seen before. "Soon, Jamie. I promise." "Okay. Dr. Kaplan says I need to go for my breathing treatment now." He blew me a kiss. "Love you, Lena." "Love you too, buddy," I whispered as the screen went dark. I sat in silence for a moment, overwhelmed by emotion. Jamie was happy, safe, receiving care I could never have provided on my own. "He's flourishing," Vincent said quietly. "The treatments are already showing improvement." I stood, facing him directly. "Why him? Why us? The truth, Vincent." He held my gaze unflinching, because I saw myself in that boy. Alone, vulnerable, at the mercy of a dangerous world. He took a step closer, and because from the moment I saw you, I wanted you in a way I've never wanted anyone before. "Lust," I challenged, though my body responded to his nearness. "At first," he admitted. "Then I had you watched. I learned who you were, your kindness, your loyalty, your strength, and I knew I had to have you in my life, whatever it took. So you manipulated circumstances, brought me into your home, used Jamie to—" "No." His voice was sharp. "I never used the boy. That was... He seemed to struggle for words. That was seeing a need I could fill, separate from my desire for you. I believed him, I realized. Despite everything, I believed in his genuine concern for Jamie. I still don't know if I can do this, I admitted. Be with you. Live in your world. Vincent closed the distance between us, his hands coming up to cradle my face with unexpected gentleness. I will never ask you to be part of the darker aspects of my business. I will never bring violence to your door again. I will protect you and Jamie with my life. His thumbs brushed my cheekbones. All I ask is that you give us a chance. In his eyes, I saw sincerity, desire, and something that looked remarkably like hope. I need to see Jamie, I said. To talk to him in person. Vincent nodded. Of course. We can leave now if you'd like. And after that? His gaze held mine, intense and unwavering. After that, you decide. Stay or go. But know this, Elena. His voice dropped to a near whisper. If you stay, it's forever. I don't give my heart by halves. My breath caught. This wasn't just protection he was offering. This was his heart, his life, his future, entwined with mine and Jamie's. I need time, I whispered. You have it, he promised, his hands falling away from my face. For now, let's go see your boy. As we prepared to leave the coastal house, I found myself stealing glances at Vincent, trying to reconcile all the versions of him I'd seen. The feared crime boss, the attentive caretaker, the passionate man who wanted me in his life. Complexity upon complexity, layers I was only beginning to understand. The choice ahead of me was impossible, terrifying, and yet, as I watched him speak quietly with Antonio, his movements precise and controlled, I realized part of me had already decided. I just wasn't ready to admit it yet, even to myself. The private medical facility where Jamie was staying resembled a luxury resort more than a hospital. Set in landscaped grounds with ocean views, it catered to the wealthy and powerful who required discretion, along with top-tier care. As Vincent's Mercedes passed through the security gates, I felt a nervous flutter in my stomach. After everything that had happened, I wasn't sure how to act around Jamie, how to hide the turmoil and danger of the past few days. He doesn't know anything about Ricci or the danger, Vincent said, seemingly reading my thoughts. To him, this is simply a special hospital where he's getting better. I nodded gratefully. Thank you for protecting him from that. Vincent's hand covered mine briefly. Always. We were escorted to a sunny private suite where Jamie was waiting, his face lighting up when he saw me. I rushed to embrace him, breathing in his familiar scent, now mingled with antiseptic. Lena, you came! He hugged me tightly, then pulled back with excitement dancing in his eyes. Dr. Kaplan says my lungs are already working better. Look, he took an exaggerated deep breath, then exhaled slowly without the wheezing that had become his normal. That's amazing, buddy, I said, my heart swelling with relief and gratitude. I glanced over my shoulder at Vincent, who stood in the doorway watching us with an unreadable expression. Jamie followed my gaze. Mr. Vincent! To my surprise, he disentangled himself from me and ran to Vincent, who crouched down to the boy's level. Did you see my new breathing machine? It's like a spaceship. Vincent's face softened in a way I'd never seen before. Is that so? You'll have to show me. Jamie grabbed Vincent's hand without hesitation, pulling him toward a table where his medical equipment sat alongside dinosaur figures and books. I watched in amazement as Vincent allowed himself to be led, listening with apparent interest as Jamie explained his treatment in 8-year-old terms. And Dr. Kaplan says after my special operation, I might not need my rescue inhaler so much, Jamie continued. Is that true? Vincent glanced at me, then back to Jamie. Dr. Kaplan is the best. If she says it, then yes, it's true. Jamie beamed, then looked between us with sudden seriousness. Are you Lena's boyfriend now? I froze, mortified. But Vincent merely smiled. Would that bother you if I was? Jamie considered this with the gravity only children can muster. No, I guess not. You make her smile. She didn't smile much after my mom and her husband died. He leaned closer to Vincent, lowering his voice to a stage whisper. And you're helping fix my breathing. That makes you pretty cool. Jamie. I finally found my voice, cheeks burning. Vincent's laugh was unexpected, rich and genuine. I appreciate your approval, James. Dr. Kaplan arrived then, saving me from further embarrassment. She reviewed Jamie's progress with us, confirming that his response to the new medications had been even better than expected. The procedure was still scheduled for the following week, but she was optimistic about the outcome. He could lead a nearly normal life with proper management, she told us, her expression warm. You've given him that chance. The "you" was directed at Vincent, who merely nodded, his hand coming to rest lightly on the small of my back. We spent the afternoon with Jamie, playing games and reading his favorite dinosaur books. I marveled at the change in Vincent, how he softened around the boy, how his usual intensity mellowed into something warmer, more approachable. He taught Jamie a card game, explaining the rules with infinite patience, celebrating the boy's victories without the condescension adults often show children. As evening approached, Jamie grew tired, his eyes drooping despite his protests. We should let you rest, I said, tucking him into the hospital bed that had been disguised to look like a regular one. Will you come back tomorrow? He asked, clutching my hand. I glanced at Vincent, who nodded slightly. Yes. We'll visit again tomorrow. Both of you? Jamie looked to Vincent, who stood at the foot of the bed. Both of us, Vincent confirmed. Jamie smiled sleepily. Good. I like when you're together. You look at Lena the way princes look at princesses in my storybooks. My cheeks flushed again, but Vincent didn't deny it. Instead, he stepped forward and gently ruffled Jamie's hair. Sleep well, James. We'll see you tomorrow. In the car heading back to the coastal house, a comfortable silence settled between us. The sun was setting over the ocean, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. Thank you, I said finally, for everything you've done for Jamie. Vincent turned to me, his expression unusually open. You don't need to thank me. Seeing him improve, seeing your relief, that's enough. He likes you, I observed. He's usually shy around men. Children are good judges of character, Vincent replied. They sense intentions before they understand words. I studied his profile, illuminated by the golden light of sunset. And what are your intentions, Vincent? With Jamie? With me? He was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the horizon. I want to give you both the life you deserve. Safety, security, happiness. His hand found mine in the space between us. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to watch James grow up healthy and strong. I want to build something that lasts beyond the empire I've created. The raw honesty in his voice made my breath catch. You barely know me. I echoed my earlier protest, though it felt hollow now. Vincent's fingers tightened around mine. I know enough. I know what matters. At the house, we ate dinner on the deck, watching stars emerge above the endless expanse of ocean. Vincent opened a bottle of wine, the conversation flowing easily between us, about Jamie's progress, about books we'd read, about places we'd traveled. Normal conversation, as if we were a normal couple, not a crime boss and his maid hiding from enemies who wanted us dead. When Vincent excused himself to take a call, I wandered down to the private beach below the house. The night was warm, the sand still holding the day's heat beneath my bare feet. Waves crashed rhythmically against the shore, their constant motion mirroring the tumult in my heart. The past few days had altered everything I thought I knew about my life. Daniel's betrayal, the danger that had been lurking unseen, Vincent's protection and his unexpected tenderness, Jamie's improving health. It was overwhelming, yet somehow, standing here under the vast canopy of stars, I felt a strange sense of clarity emerging. I heard Vincent approach before I saw him, his footsteps nearly silent on the sand. Everything okay? I asked as he came to stand beside me. Business, he said simply. Nothing that can't wait. We stood side by side, watching the moonlight play across the water. The breeze carried the salt scent of the ocean, mingled with Vincent's subtle cologne. Without thinking, I leaned slightly into his warmth. Have you decided? He asked quietly, not looking at me. I took a deep breath, facing the question I'd been avoiding. I'm afraid, I admitted. Of me? There was a vulnerability in the question that tugged at something deep inside me. No, I realized with sudden certainty. Not of you. Of this feeling. Of risking everything again. Vincent turned to face me then, his eyes reflecting the starlight. Elena, he said, my name like a prayer on his lips. I can't promise you a normal life. I can't promise there won't be danger or complications. But I can promise you this. I will protect you and James with every resource, every ounce of power I possess. I will never lie to you. I will never betray you. His hand came up to brush a strand of hair from my face, and I will love you until my last breath. The word love hung in the air between us, electric and terrifying and beautiful. It's too fast, I whispered, even as my body swayed toward his. This doesn't happen in real life. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Real life is what we make it, Elena. Some people spend decades together and never truly see each other. Others need only days. His logic couldn't be argued with. But my heart still hesitated on the precipice of this irrevocable decision. What about your business? The danger? What kind of life would that be for Jamie? My legitimate businesses can run without the other aspects, Vincent said, surprising me. I've been moving in that direction for years. He paused. For the right reason, I could accelerate that transition. I stared at him in shock. You would give up your empire? For us? I would give up anything for you, he said with absolute conviction. The question is, can you accept who I am now, knowing who I'm willing to become? The intensity of his gaze held me captive as the full weight of his words sank in. This powerful, dangerous man was offering to change his entire life, to reshape an empire, for me and Jamie. I need you to be sure, I whispered, my hands coming up to rest on his chest. I've lived with lies before. I can't do it again. Vincent's arms encircled me, drawing me closer. I have never been more certain of anything in my life. The last of my resistance crumbled as his lips found mine in a kiss that started gentle but quickly blazed into something fierce and consuming. His hands tangled in my hair as mine clutched at his shoulders, the heat between us igniting into an inferno. When we finally broke apart, breathless, I knew there was no turning back. Yes, I said simply. Vincent's eyes darkened. Yes? Yes to you. To us. To whatever life we build together. I took a shuddering breath, but Jamie comes first, always. His safety, his happiness, will be my priority as well, Vincent finished. I swear it. He sealed the promise with another kiss, this one tender and reverent. When we parted, he rested his forehead against mine, our breath mingling in the small space between us. I never expected you, he murmured. You changed everything. I smiled, realizing the truth of those words for both of us. So did you. 1 year later, the breeze carried the scent of roses and salt air across the terrace as I watched Jamie race across the lawn with his new puppy. His laughter, clear and unhindered by wheezing or coughing, was the sweetest sound in the world. They're going to fall in the fountain again, Vincent observed, coming to stand behind me, his arms slipping around my waist. That dog is a menace. I leaned back against his chest, smiling. You're the one who said he needed a pet. I'm beginning to regret that decision, he grumbled, but there was no real annoyance in his voice. The past year had brought changes neither of us could have imagined. True to his word, Vincent had accelerated the legitimization of his businesses, cutting ties with the darker elements of his empire. There had been challenges, rivals sensing weakness, old allies feeling betrayed, but Vincent had navigated them all with the same ruthless efficiency he applied to everything. We'd moved to this oceanfront estate after our wedding 6 months ago, a private ceremony with Jamie as our only attendant. The property was secure without feeling like a fortress, close enough to the city for business, but removed from its dangers. Jamie's health had improved dramatically after his procedure. He still needed daily medication and occasional checkups with Dr. Kaplan. But gone were the terrifying asthma attacks that had defined his childhood. He'd started at a new school in September, making friends for the first time in his life, and next month, we would officially become his parents. The adoption papers were being finalized, transforming our makeshift family into something permanent and legal. "What are you thinking about?" Vincent murmured against my hair. "How much everything has changed," I answered honestly. "A year ago, I was scrubbing your floors and terrified of you." He chuckled, the sound rumbling through his chest against my back. "And now?" I turned in his arms, looping my hands around his neck. "Now I'm just terrified of how much I love you." The smile that transformed his face never failed to take my breath away. Gone was the hard mask he'd worn when we first met, replaced by genuine warmth that few outside our small family ever saw. "I told you once that I don't give my heart by halves," Vincent said, his hands settling on my waist. "I meant it." "I know." I stood on tiptoe to kiss him softly. "Neither do I." A shriek of laughter drew our attention back to the lawn, where Jamie and the puppy had indeed found their way into the fountain. The boy was soaking wet, his face alight with joy as the dog barked and splashed beside him. Vincent sighed dramatically. "I'll get towels." I caught his hand before he could move away. "Wait." I guided his palm to rest on my stomach, still flat but containing our newest secret. "We're going to need a bigger house." His eyes widened, then filled with such tenderness it made my heart ache. "Elena, I just found out yesterday," I said, smiling through sudden tears. Dr. Kaplan confirmed it. Vincent pulled me against him fiercely, his arms wrapping around me as if he might never let go. "I never dared to dream of this," he whispered against my hair. "Of you, of James, of a family." I leaned back to look into his eyes, seeing the emotion he still struggled to express. "For a man who plans everything, you certainly didn't see me coming. The best things in life are unplanned," he replied, his hand still resting protectively over our unborn child. "You taught me that." As Jamie's laughter rang out across the gardens, and Vincent's lips found mine again, I marveled at the strange, beautiful journey that had brought me here. From cleaning floors to standing as the equal partner of the man who had once terrified me. From barely surviving to truly living. All because a mafia boss had sent his driver to spy on his maid, and what I'd done for a child had changed everything.